I'm your host, Jane Simons Tate, and you're watching Respect My Hustle, Trans Profiles in the Workplace. Now, Respect My Hustle means so many things. It's a series of articles and videos about trans professionals who are truly trailblazers in the trans community. And today, I am sitting with one of those true trailblazers. I'm so excited to have you in my presence. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for asking me.
Yes. So let the audience know your name and your many job titles that you have.
My name is Eli Strong, and my primary job is that I am a CRM system administrator, so I work mostly with databases for a company here in Washington, D.C. But I also am the host and producer of the Strong Stance on the Back to Us radio network, which is a podcast, a monthly podcast that focuses on stories, interviews, and issue shows, discussion shows that affect the trans and gender nonconforming community. It's got 3 basic streams, so it just kind of depends on which type of episode. My favorite ones lately have been the new thing that I've launched was the stories. So it's very much like a This American Life or Snap Judgment, where trans and gender nonconforming folks send me stories, and we just kind of edit them together under a theme. And then I am also on the board for the Dr. Anise Mabry Foundation and America in Transition, which is a video project that's very similar to, it's a storytelling project as well for trans people, but this is focusing on, first of all, videos rather than like podcasts or written stories, but it's also focusing on folks that are in rural areas and trans people of color. Because there are a lot of stories that aren't being told.
Exactly.
So that's the aim of that project.
Exactly. That's wonderful. And that's wonderful. So, I'm from Alabama, right?
I am too.
And you from Alabama.
Yes.
So let the audience know a little bit about your childhood in Alabama and your experience there.
I think that anybody that has known me for more than a couple of days knows that I'm a diehard Alabama football fan. I have been very lucky to be able to go to the last 3 national championship games that we went to with my father. My father was an athletic trainer with Bear Bryant, and my mom was also at the University of Alabama as well, and so she's an alum. My brother went to Auburn.
Okay. My dad loves Auburn.
But he's still my brother. So, but yeah, like I have a Bear Bryant tattoo. Just very much like Alabama football is a very big part of my life. As far as my actual, my childhood in Alabama, I was there until I was about 23 when I moved up here to D.C. And I was actually only supposed to be up here in D.C. for 4 months for an internship, and it was the last thing that I had to do in order to get my master's in social work at the University of Alabama. And so I came up here, and after a month, I knew that this is where I needed to be.
This was the place to be.
Yeah, so that 4 months turned into 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So, but my time in Alabama was... It was interesting. It was difficult at times, especially as a queer person in the South, especially as a very liberal person in the South. I identified when I was in college and in high school as a lesbian. And as I started to figure things out about myself with a couple of trusted people, I started to identify as trans, but I didn't really know what that looked like for myself, for me, until I moved up here and was able to kind of process things in my own time and in my own space without a lot of people around. So I enjoyed my time. I loved my time at the University of Alabama. That was obviously 6 years of student ticket prices was nice. But it wasn't always easy, but I still enjoy going back. I don't think that I'll ever live there again. But almost all of my family lives there. I'm half Sicilian. I have 22 first cousins, and so most of them live in Alabama. My father still lives in South Alabama. My mom and my stepdad still live in the Birmingham area. Live in Dover. So yeah, I try to get down there every now and then. I think I'm going back next week because both mine and my mother's birthdays are next week. So we try to spend some time together on our birthdays. But yeah.
Okay, so you live in D.C. though. This is the place.
So I do love DC, and I lived here for 10 years, and then about 2 years ago, my wife and I just said, we can't do this anymore. Living in DC is very cost prohibitive. It's extremely not only expensive just to live, but we wanted things out of life. Like we did the city thing, and now we want kids, and we want to buy a farm. She was raised on a farm and wants another one. She rode horses her whole life, and so I can't do that.
Right.
We can't do that in DC. Right. So we moved to a very, very tiny town. We moved from Washington, D.C. At the time, I think it was about 645,000 people, to Washington, Georgia, which is 4,000 people. It's like, I think, 7.2 square miles for the entire town. So it's a gear shift, and it's halfway between Athens and Augusta.
Okay.
So we have like 4 restaurants. And,
wow.
It's very, very small. It's very, very small.
Full of a lot of love.
But yeah. So, I mean, I kept my job in D.C. I now work... Normally, I only wear this when I'm like here in DC for work. I normally work in gym shorts and t-shirts because I'm in my office. I get up and walk across the hall and go to work.
Okay. Well, speaking of your job, that's why you're here. The great things that you're doing for the trans community, right? So give us a little bit of back history of your journey, your job title. I'm getting into now.
Yeah, it's been interesting because I always feel like, you know, when you asked me about my titles, and I was like, and I also do these things, those are like my unpaid jobs, right? Those are my hobbies and unpaid jobs. The job that puts food on the table and keeps a roof over our head is the database administrator job. And it's really interesting how I fell into it because, you know, when I was at the University of Alabama, I'd started as pre-med. And I was a biology major. And I just found myself kind of wildly unhappy because I was good at it, but I wasn't great, and I'm very much a like type A personality. If I can't be great at it, why am I doing it, right? And I wasn't finding joy out of it, and so I talked to an industrial psychologist and took some of those Myers-Briggs tests or whatever, right? Trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to do, and it said that I was strong in law and politics and public speaking and social work and that kind of thing, and so I changed my major to social work. So I have 2 degrees in social work, but I work with databases. Right, so yeah, I mean, it's nice because it helps, especially in the unpaid work that I do. So I came up here for an internship to get my master's. I was interning at the Human Rights Campaign and started to work with databases in their field department and started learning that I was really good with data. And was doing like the alerts that you get if you've signed up for any kind of alerts from a nonprofit that they send you. Like I would build those. And then after my internship, I got a job at NARAL Pro-Choice America and worked there for almost 4 years as a data professional. And, you know, I was mostly just doing the alert stuff. And the manager in the information services department, we used to, back when I smoked, we would go out on a smoke break, and she said, I want you to come be on my team. And I was like, I don't know how to do some of the stuff that you do. And she was like, I'll teach you. And so I did. I transferred over to that department. She taught me a lot more about relational databases and a lot more about some SQL coding and things like that I needed to do my job. And then when Obama got elected, you know, a lot of people donate to nonprofits out of panic, right? They want to make sure that there are great organizations like this around to fight for rights. And when you have a progressive president come in, a lot of people relax and they go, okay, we're okay. Reproductive rights are safe right now. And so the donations took a hit. And so NARAL had to go through some layoffs. And so I was one of the positions that got cut. And so I moved into the corporate world, which is the job that I currently have now. I've been there for a little over 7 years. Doing database work, and with this new position, it's been a gear shift to move from the nonprofit world to the corporate world, and the primary system that I work with, Salesforce, which is like the industry-leading CRM, it's a lot of that is self-taught. I just kind of like we got it in a contract and was like, okay, well, I'm going to learn this system, and so now I'm a certified Salesforce administrator, and it's really great. But, you know, it wasn't always easy being in the corporate world as a trans person. Because I started that job, you know, I transitioned at NARAL. And that was a little bit easier because you had more queer folks that were there. It was a more atmosphere in the nonprofit world where, you know, your work and your friends and all that are kind of in the same place, right? There's not a whole lot of work-life separation. And so it wasn't an awful place to transition. It was actually pretty good. I had a couple of problems with a couple of people, but I didn't have anybody that I could really talk to I wasn't huge into Facebook at the time with all the groups that are out there and things like that. And I didn't have a whole lot of people that I could talk to.
Like a support group or
exactly.
something.
Well, I mean, we had a support group, but there's something about a lot of the people that were in the group. So I used to be the facilitator for the DC Area Transmasculine Society, or DCATS, which is a social and support group here in DC for mostly folks that were identified as female at birth but feel that it's an inaccurate or incomplete description of who they are. So we're not just talking about post-op trans men or trans men that intend to transition. We're talking about the entire spectrum of anybody that feels like somebody told me I was female, this isn't really who I am. Right. But the difference is that a lot of them were much younger and they weren't in that same spot of life. And I did talk to some of them. Like one of my best friends, he's my brother, he and I went through that group together. I went through that group with a lot of people, and I was able to talk to them about certain things, but they weren't in my office. You know what I mean? Like they weren't in my particular field.
Right.
And at the time I didn't really know anybody that was trans in the tech world. And now you've got like Angelica Ross, who's started Trans Tech Social Enterprises, and all these other people, that have started all these great trans organizations for tech people, like Courtney Ziegler and folks like that. And so it's awesome to have those people to look up to and to create a network. But at the time, I just kind of felt like I was kind of feeling it out myself. And when I first started in the corporate world, I had really only begun my medical transition as far as hormones. It may have been less than a year. And I eventually found out that there was someone who had found out that I was trans and thought that I was okay with people knowing, and had let a couple people know about it. And look, really like the guy. I really, really do. And we've talked about this before. And he's just like, I thought that you were more out in the workplace than you were, and I'm sorry, right? And so he's a great guy, but it was just a misunderstanding.
And let people know exactly Trans 101 about outing and all that type of thing.
So outing is something that you should never do, period, right? You shouldn't even out a trans person to another trans person, because there are some trans people that do not. It's a safety issue. It's also a privacy issue. I think that one of the ways that I talk about it a lot with people who just feel like, okay, somebody outed me and I'm upset about it, but I don't know how to approach it. And one of the clearest ways that I can approach it is, if everybody knows about HIPAA these days, right? That your medical information is private and only you have the right to disclose that, and your status as a trans person is medical information, right? And so spreading that medical information is just it's not that far off from telling someone about possibly a chronic illness that you may have or something that is none of their business, right?
Exactly. Confidential.
Exactly, and it's also, it's your information, it's your story to share, and it's a safety issue for a lot of people, particularly trans women of color that are being murdered at an alarming rate, right? So like you don't out people, even if it's to people that you think are okay, because it's just none of your business, but B, you may not know what connection that person has with that person that you're walking with.
Exactly.
Right? Like I've known people that have come up to me and said, oh, I heard about this trans guy that started at a place that I work, blah, 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 and showed me a picture of him, and I knew who they were, but I'm like, I'm not going to talk to you about that.
Exactly.
That's none of my business. Exactly. So
right.
So an outing can be as small as telling someone that, oh, this person is trans, or in a much more disrespectful way that has happened to me in the past of, oh, Eli's really a girl, right? And so it's like, it can be disrespectful. It can be meant as a respectful, oh, I have a lot of respect for this person who's trans, I mean, like you and I have talked about the type of people that you look up to.
Right.
And the list that I gave you is nowhere near the list of the people that inspire me, but the people that also inspire me are people that may not be out, so I'm not going to name those people.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Exactly.
Outing is a serious thing.
It is a very serious thing.
It's a very serious thing.
All right. Another good positive serious thing. What's the importance that you think that trans youth having role models they can look up to?
I mean, I don't think that anyone can deny two things that are going on right now in the trans community and have been going on for a very long time. It's not just right now, but it is still going on. And that is that trans people are being murdered at alarming rates, and our trans youth are committing suicide at alarming rates. partially because of lack of acceptance, lack of community, lack of housing, or, I mean, I know that sounds to some people like, oh, lack of acceptance, right? But
that's deep, though.
It is, especially if it's
deep.
coming from your community or your family, the people, the parents that brought you into this world or that are supposed to love you regardless, and you either get kicked out of your home or you are just basically locked away, literally and figuratively. It can lead you to just go, this is not worth this anymore. And so I've met a lot of trans people that... they're used to seeing trans people in more of like the public arena things, like some of the things that I do, like with the podcasting, or some of the things that, you calling me a trailblazer. I appreciate it, but there are people in this community, in this city, that are doing so many things. Right. And I mean, just...
maybe in this series, so look forward to that.
Yes. So that would be amazing, right? Because there's so many people doing so many things in both the advocacy world and outside the advocacy world. Yes. And since a majority of my time is spent, it's a good balance, but the one that feeds me, literally, I feel like it's important to show trans folks that there is a way for trans youth. There's a way for you to be successful no matter what arena you choose to make your living at, right? And whether that's activist work, whether that's in the tech world, whether that's as an artist, whether that is as a sex worker, whether that is, it doesn't matter. Your arena of choice, it's important to see what people in that arena that look like you, that have a life like yours. And it's also important so that you can, like I mentioned, it was kind of difficult not having somebody that was specifically in the tech world for me to talk to about how do I do that. Like when I transitioned at NARAL, I just wrote my email to my colleagues saying, okay, I'm changing my name, I'm changing my pronouns, I'm changing my email. I'm not getting into anything personal because that's none of your business. But I still have to, it would have been nice to have somebody proofread that for me. Or to tell me, these are the type of things that you're allowed to keep to yourself when I need some time off to recover from surgery. How do I approach that with my HR department or my supervisor? And what are they supposed to know, and what are they not legally required to know, and things like that. And that was something that was difficult. I definitely had some cis people that I trusted. My mother was definitely one of them.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, she's worked in the outplacement world for a long time before she did what she does now. So, she helps, if I've got a question about resumes or interview or they said this or what should I do.
She's the one to go to.
Oh, yeah. She's in the business world. I definitely rely on my mom a lot.
Oh,
but
perfect.
Mom hasn't transitioned at the workplace. So I think that it's important to have folks to show that no matter what career you choose, there are people that exist in that career that look like you, that have your similar walk of life.
And respecting all job titles that trans people have. It's very, very, inclusive.
Yes.
So, yes. Speaking of careers, so let's move on to careers. So, what advice would you give a trans youth, a trans adult wanting to pursue their career goals?
So, I know that planning isn't always the easiest thing to do.
Yes. No.
It's really not, right? So, but if you know in advance that you would like to pursue a career, if you can talk to people that are in that arena, if you can try to plan out what that looks like for you, first of all, it can hopefully help you to avoid some of the surprises that may pop up along the way, right? It doesn't mean it always works, right? What's that saying that we make plans and God laughs?
Exactly.
Right? So planning isn't always going to fix everything, but if you can do some research on your chosen field, or find out if there are people that are trans in that field that you can talk to, have them walk through it. At one point, I thought that I might want to go to law school, sat for the LSAT, did all that kind of stuff.
Oh, wow.
And I interned at the district attorney's office in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and I talked to lawyers and quickly figured out that I did not want to go to law school, and I did not want to be a lawyer, right? So it's always nice to have somebody to talk to. So preparation, I feel like, is huge. I also feel like being prepared mentally for what you may or may not have to deal with, because there are certain fields that may be more difficult to be in as a a trans person or a gender nonconforming person.
Especially like hardcore like corporations. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's going to be kind of hard trying to get into.
Well, and that's why I was really concerned about moving over to the corporate world, but they were the ones that offered me the job. I would have loved to have stayed in nonprofit.
Oh, wow.
And so when my choice is unemployment or moving to the corporate world, I had to kind of swallow a lot of fear and just hope for the best.
That's
right?
ironic, though.
It's. I will say that I feel like I work for a pretty great group of people. We're a very diverse office.
Perfect.
And so it's nice, and it gives me the flexibility to do what I need to do and live where I need to live to balance that work life.
Perfect. Yeah. So also, what's some do's and don'ts that you'll give any trans person entering into an office space or a business setting? Like, what's the list of things of, yes, do this,
right,
and maybe not do that?
Right. So to your point about acceptance in all different chosen career paths, the difficulty I have with really naming do's and don'ts is that everyone's path is so different, right? And what works for me may not work for you, and what I did that was safe for me may be very dangerous or violent for you, and vice versa. So basically my do's and don'ts kind of go around that you should try to prepare as much as you can, or try to do some research if you can. There are lots of Facebook groups that are purely focused on the workforce and the workplace with trans people, and so you can find those groups and ask, is there anybody that's in this particular field, or is there anybody that'd be willing to field some questions about XYZ, like whatever the case may be. So trying to prepare yourself as much as possible is obviously a great way to go. Definitely be patient with yourself, period. Like patience. Just in life, right? Because especially if you're the type of person that has been waiting to live the life that you were always meant to live, when you finally make that decision to take that first step, you want it to happen tomorrow, and it's going to be hard to be patient with yourself. So try to be patient with yourself, and just kind of do what works for you. And honestly, the only don't that I have. Mm-hmm. The only don't that I really have, I mean, I'm sure that on a one-off basis I could talk to somebody one-on-one about, I'm not sure that that's a good idea for you personally because you told me that you're afraid of this and whatever. Yeah. But honestly, the only don't that I have is it's really a bad idea, in my personal opinion, to compare your path or your journey and your accomplishments to someone else's path and journey and accomplishments. Okay. We all have our own walk that we have to do, and what works for some people may not work for you. And so I know a lot of trans folks that are very upset because either they started hormones but they can't afford to have surgery, or they don't live in an area that's accessible for them to do whatever the case may be, or they've been on hormones for a certain amount of years and all the people that they know, quote unquote, have already gotten so much further than them. Trying to place someone else's experience onto your life and say this is the cookie cutter way to be trans, because there's no one right way to be trans, right? Trying to put somebody else's life into yours and force yourself into their mold can be very frustrating. It can be extremely unfruitful, and it can really drive you to feel like this isn't working and I can't do this. Right? There are lots of people that I have known that have contemplated suicide because life is just hard as a trans person in this country or anywhere else, right? And so if you can minimize that as much as possible, and sometimes letting your own path be your own path,
your own journey,
exactly, rather than saying, well, these three people that I know, these three women and these two guys that I know, they did this and they did that and they did it within this number of years, or they have more money, or they have more privilege, especially when it comes to the privilege that we have in our community. The reality is that I, as a white trans man, my life is a whole lot easier than a lot of the black trans women that I know, or the black trans men that I know.
Exactly, which is very important.
Exactly, and so trying to put yourself into somebody else's mold it might get a little frustrating. I wouldn't recommend it. I don't recommend it
either.
Yeah.
Yes. So one thing I want to put us together. We talked about basically people that you look up to and inspired by, and I'm all about basically sisterhood and brotherhood, bringing some togetherness, a unity in our gay community, a whole completely togetherness.
Yeah.
Right. So who are some key people that you look up to that inspire you on a daily basis, that you be like, okay, this person right here is motivating me
Yeah.
deeply.
Yeah. There are a lot. And as I mentioned, there are going to be people that are not named here because of the fact that they're not out. But Teak Milan, Laverne Cox, Lords Ashley Hunter, Lady Dana Didi, Angelica Ross with what she's doing in the tech world, Courtney Ziegler, Tracy McDaniels in Atlanta, Georgia. I love Tracy so much. And just these people that have started their own things, or they are grinding in the tech world, or they are singing their hearts out and doing their art, or they're counseling people that are in need. I have so many friends that are counselors and social workers that I very much look up to and kind of commune with on a regular basis. People that are just making things happen for their life in their time, whether they're educating folks or living a private life or living a public life. There's just so many people. I could go on and on. And I've met so many great ones even in the Atlanta area. That's been nice. So the DC community and the Atlanta community, because that's where I've lived most as an out trans person, has been really big. Sasha Alexander at Sylvia Rivera Law Project.
Okay. Yes.
Really awesome people. John Williams, who works here in DC. Rafi, who works, at the White House. You know what I mean? Like, there are just amazing people in our community that are doing so many incredible things that I regularly would love any chance to talk to follow what they're going on Facebook and all that kind of stuff. When I come into town, if they're in town, I love to get together and kind of feed my soul with some of that, because in my small town, it's, I got to drive an hour to see a trans person that I know.
See, that's no, we need to have more.
Yeah.
But I would say this, I am seeing a revolution in the right way. I am seeing more people getting more inclusive.
Yeah.
But there's still issues in the workplace.
There is.
There's still so much that have not been done that needs to be done. So let's talk about exactly trans disrespect.
Right.
Okay? In the workplace. The abuse, the harassment.
Yeah.
All of that.
So, even before you get to the abuse and harassment of when you have a job, that's assuming that you were able to secure employment in the first place.
That's right.
Right? Which a lot of folks get turned away, whether it's against the law or not. Like, Georgia's an at-work state, but luckily my company's based in D.C., right? So, not that I would have any problems with my company, but it's one of those things that's something that I worry about. And when it comes to respect in the workplace, just being able to pay your bills to make sure that you don't end up homeless, to be able to feed yourself, right? To be able to make sure that you're getting paid for the work that you're doing, right? It's of critical importance, and I think that what really needs to happen is there's a lot of questioning that goes on from the cis community.
Yes. Education.
If we as trans people are telling you that something's going on, that there's a problem, that this is a thing that's happening, that people are being murdered, don't ask us to prove it. Don't doubt us. These are our lived experiences. This is our life. Listen to the people that are doing this work. You know what I mean?
Right.
And workplace respect is a huge thing, because if you look at a trans person and all you see is a trans person, you are missing so much about them.
The whole painting.
Right.
In the spirit.
Right. So it's important that is for some people it's a very big part of their life. For some people it's not. But it's important to know when you are crossing a line and when you are not, and what is appropriate and what is not. There are questions that I regularly get, sometimes in the workplace, sometimes not, and they're not really appropriate.
Right.
So it's important to know where that boundary is and what is professionally a responsible thing to be saying to someone, and respecting everyone for the work that they do, not necessarily who they are, who they were identified with at birth, what their IDs or their birth certificates say, who they are married to, how many people they are married to. Like, there's a level at a workplace where it's just like that. Yes, I want to bring my whole life to my workplace, but you need to respect me for the work that I do and the job that I do.
And the hustle. So tell the audience your definition of respect my hustle in your own words. Just free falling.
Okay. I think that goes a lot back to what we talked about workplace equality. I feel like whatever a person needs to do in order to be safe and to keep a roof over their head and food in their mouths and to be able to afford the basic necessities of just living, especially in a city like DC, but in general, that needs to be respected, right? Just because we might look different or act different, or I have job A and you have job B, there's a lot of society that likes to shame folks for the jobs that they have.
Yes.
And it's incredibly disheartening because I'm sorry, but whatever, if it's not affecting your life, I need you to take a step back. Right. And so I feel like it's very important to respect where people are as far as their professions, anything that they are doing to be paid to basically survive, because it is not easy to survive as a trans person. And so if I have to, or if anybody else has to do things to survive, whether that's, working 3 minimum wage jobs or a corporate job or a nonprofit job or being a sex worker or there's a lot of people that just need help, and their hustle may not look like somebody else's hustle.
Exactly.
If you need to do whatever you need to do to survive and be happy, or as close to happy as we can find sometimes in this world, then that needs to be respected, because it's your life, right?
Exactly.
And if it doesn't affect your life, then it's none of your business, right? So,
right.
And I find that there's a lot of people that don't respect that, but have also never been put in a position where they have had to take a job that they hated and keep it, or quit a job with no job to go to because it was just soul-sucking, right? And no matter what decisions you make in order to keep yourself safe and sane and alive, have to be respected, because it's your life and those were your choices that you made.
Right.
Sometimes we don't always get to make that choice. Sometimes we are forced into positions that we don't want to be in. But it doesn't mean that we can't respect each other for the careers that we choose to have, or the hustle that we have in order to stay alive.
You heard it from Eli. That is a great definition. Okay? Thank you for having this conversation with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
So that's all we have today for Respect My Hustle, Trans Profiles in the Workplace. I'm your host, James Thomas Tate. And please stay tuned to more videos and articles on www.urge.org. Like always, stay blessed, and I love you. Until next time.